Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. What's interesting about so many of the people you see talking on television is not just that they tell you things that they know are not true. They do. They lie regularly, and they shade the truth even more than that. You, of course, knew that. It's obvious. What's amazing is how they do it in unison. One will say something false, and then in what seems like minutes, all the others are saying it too, the exact same thing. Sometimes word for word. It's like they're all texting each other in commercial breaks. Or maybe they just know instinctively what the latest Democratic Party talking points will be. We could give you endless examples of this, but here's the most recent one. In the days since last week's midterm elections, all the geniuses on cable have simultaneously decided that the migrant caravan marching toward the United States is a mirage. It's not real. It never has been real. It was always a fake threat created by unscrupulous right-wing politicians to win the last election. Watch them sing that tune in perfect harmony.
This was never an urgent issue. These people were 1,000+ miles away from the border.
To also further your point, if you are so concerned about invaders and very bad people, wouldn't you be on the border today instead of your
Correct.
Secretary of Defense?
They've been running on an imaginary caravan.
The president talked a lot. He couldn't stop talking about the so-called caravan heading toward the border.
This stupid caravan. You know, it's a lie that this caravan is a problem of that magnitude.
Right. The so-called caravan, the imaginary caravan. That's what Jeff Zucker told them to say. Too bad we now have pictures. Reality is the enemy of propaganda. And the reality on our southern border tonight is that a large number of migrants from that caravan are now massed just south of San Diego, and they're trying to get into this country. In the meantime, those same people are overwhelming city services in Tijuana and causing a crisis there. The people from the caravan are doing all of this because they actually exist. They are a physical reality, no matter what they're telling you on CNN. Well, apparently nobody has alerted California Senator Kamala Harris. She believes that anyone worried about illegal immigration must be a dangerous racist. And that's why she just compared federal law enforcement officers to the Ku Klux Klan.
Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and force?
It was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between sworn
I'm talking about perception.
officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a
that
perception?
puts ICE in the same category as the KKK?
American citizens trying to protect their country's borders, upholding laws passed by our democratically elected Congress, are somehow like the KKK. It seems like an especially stupid and vicious thing to say. It's cruel, really. How would you feel if you were an ICE officer or your brother was? Can you imagine throwing out that kind of slander at your fellow Americans just for doing their jobs? You'd have to be an awfully self-righteous person to talk like that. Harris is. So are a lot of them. Listen to Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, a man who advocates for unrestricted late-term abortion, explain that he's on Jesus' team, and you aren't.
Jesus said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. What you did for those who seemed less important, you did for me. Not the least of these. It's just society may act like they're less important, but we don't, because we understand the value of people. We understand the dignity of work. We understand the values this country stands for.
We understand the value of little people, Senator Brown says. Really, do you? How about the millions of American workers whose wages haven't risen in decades, thanks in part to mass immigration? Or how, by the way, since we're on the topic, how about the people of Tijuana? The caravan came north because they knew they'd have a shot of getting into this country. Democrats told them that. They encouraged this whole thing from the very first day. Now it's a disaster. The mayor of Tijuana says his city is buckling under the weight of the migrants. Many of them are criminals, the mayor of Tijuana says. Violence has broken out. People have been hurt. Dozens of migrants never even made it to the border, by the way. They are still missing. presumably kidnapped by drug cartels, the human cost has been very high. Democrats are not talking about that cost somehow. It's not interesting to them. It won't win them elections. We'd like to talk about it, though. That's why we invited Chris Hahn on. He's an attorney, radio host, and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. He joins us tonight. So, Chris, before we even get to all that, Sherrod Brown from Ohio, who's been endorsed by NARAL, by the way, is lecturing us on Jesus. Do you think Sherrod Brown's a little bit closer to Jesus than, say, I am?
Well, Matthew 25 applies here, don't you think? I mean, that's what he was quoting. We have people who are fleeing for their lives, who are in desperate need, who want to come to this country and seek asylum legally, by the way, by presenting themselves at the border. And we are sending troops. And by the way, we're sending troops to Texas when they're coming in San Diego.
Before you roll right into your talking point, hold on. Before you get to the script, let me just, if you could just address my question, though. I mean, is that the new standard? You think it's a fair standard? This is not something that I have introduced into this. This is Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio is lecturing us about how he's on Jesus' team and we're not. Is that a fair form of political discourse? Is this a theocracy to assess what Jesus would do first?
No, I think we're pointing out the hypocrisy on the right that likes to claim that they are Christians, yet they ignore the teachings of Christ, which Matthew 25 clearly directs us to help those in need.
They're hypocrites. So people who don't believe in God get to tell Christians what it is to be a Christian. So let me just ask you, which politicians would you say right now on the right are invoking Jesus when they talk about building a wall? Like, what exactly are you talking about?
How about Mike Pence? How about Mike Pence every single day, everything he does? Every time Mike Pence talks, he invokes Christ. Every single time. I'm not going to name one every time.
Just one example.
Clip of any speech he's ever given.
Tell me
how about the convention? The first thing he said at the convention was, I'm a Christian, a father, and a conservative in that order.
So he's a Christian.
That's what Mike Pence says. So if he's really a Christian, he should be practicing what Jesus taught in Matthew 25.
And you think that Jesus would have open borders? Is that what you're saying? I mean, is it? I guess my question is it a little much? No, I'm aware of the verse. Hold on, I'm aware of the verse.
Yeah.
So, but you're comfortable with this, is what you're saying.
I don't know. Let me tell you. I mean, you're aware of it, but I don't know that you believe it. That's what it says, Tucker.
Do you see yourself?
That's what Mike Pence pretends to acknowledge, but he doesn't.
I'm trying not to end this interview right now because I'm getting offended. I wonder if you understand the extent to which you're playing with fire, introducing religious faith, appropriating someone else's religious faith, by the way, into a conversation about public policy. Do you think that's a wise thing to do? Do you think if Mike Pence got up and said, I'm for building a wall and I'm quoting this scripture to justify it, I know for a fact that I would say, whoa, settle down. There's a public policy question. It's a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country. Don't start doing that. It's not a theocracy. But you're saying that now that that's okay.
Here's the thing. One, I didn't mean to offend you on religious grounds. I take that back.
Come on now. I'm on Jesus' team and you're not? Like, what is that?
I hear you. I hear you. I'm just pointing out that many on the right have taken Christ up as their banner of how they want to govern, and yet when it comes to doing something like this, they ignore the teachings of Christ. I do not think that religion or scripture should be the basis of our governance in this country.
But it's okay.
I believe that the
when
founders put separation of church
Mr.
and
Late-Term
state
Abortion
for a
does
reason.
it, lecturing me on Jesus. Okay.
Well, look.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's all, since I guess everything's allowed now, it doesn't matter, like whatever it takes to get what we want, is it okay to compare federal law enforcement officials to the KKK, as Senator Harris did yesterday?
Well, look, I watched that whole clip, Tucker, and frankly, she was not comparing them to the KKK. She was suggesting to the nominee that there is a perception among some, and she even said, probably wrongfully, that there are people out there who are doing things to create fear just as the KKK
thing
did.
I think of.
So how are we going to correct the perception?
Okay. So I get it.
How are we going to correct the perception?
I get it, Chris. Look, I mean, a lot of Hitler's closest staff wore blue ties. I'm not calling you a Nazi. I'm just saying a lot of people think you are. And now that I've raised it and linked you to the Nazis, what's your response? I mean, no, she's comparing federal law enforcement officials to the Klan. And I just wonder, like, is there a limit to what you can say in public if you're a U.S. senator before you drive the country into some kind of internal conflict? Like, can you really say things like that now?
You should not compare law enforcement people to the Klan, and that is not what she was doing. She was engaging in a conversation with somebody who was seeking to run ICE on how he would change the perception among some people in this country that they should fear ICE in the same way that they fear other groups.
Is there a poll on this? Hold on, but how would Kamala Harris, who's lived in rich person worlds her entire life, how exactly would she, how would she know this? Does she have some polls she's pointing to? People think that ICE is like the Klan? I don't think she does. No, she's trying to impugn the personal integrity of people serving the country on the board. Like, what is this? The Klan?
She's heard from constituents. She's heard from groups that represent people who are fearful of ICE in her state. I'm sure she's trying to correct that fear because Senator Harris is a very sensible person, and I watched that entire clip
accuses law enforcement of being like the Klan. Really?
She wasn't accusing them of anything.
Of course she is. I think she's totally irresponsible. I want her to be responsible. She could be president. Finally, is it time to concede that the Caravan is real and that they're overwhelming Tijuana? The mayor of Tijuana says that a lot of members of the Caravan are violent criminals, and he's afraid of them. Is he a racist, do you think? It sounds like he might be.
Nobody said it wasn't real. They said it wasn't a real threat. And even
but the mayor
General
of Tijuana
Mattis,
sounds
General
like a flat-out racist, maybe a Klansman. Do you think he is?
The president's own generals acknowledge that this is not a real threat to our national security.
But the mayor of Tijuana says it's a threat to him. Well, hold on. Wait. I mean, I'm wondering, would Jesus be okay with what the mayor of Tijuana has said? Is he a racist? He says they're violent criminals.
Is Tijuana analogous to the United States of America?
Just
and what we should be afraid of as
mayor of Tijuana sounds like a hardened bigot.
Tijuana has a lot less resources than the United States of America. We have more people along our border, I would imagine, than there are police officers in Tijuana.
I'm worried. I think Jesus would be very upset about the mayor of Tijuana. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm going to call Sherrod Brown about it after this. Father Brown, maybe I'll see him on Sunday preaching from the pulpit. Ugh. Chris, great to see you. Thank you.